She broke his wrist before he could finish the threat. The crack echoed through the hallway, sharp, clean, final. Then Hannah Blake adjusted her scrubs, tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear, and walked to the nurse's station like nothing had happened. The security guard she'd just disarmed lay crumpled against the wall, cradling his shattered forearm, too stunned to scream. By the time the night shift realized what they'd seen, she was already clocking in. Just another nurse. Just another face in the rotation. But by sunrise, the entire fourth floor of Redwood Heights Medical Center would know the truth. They'd been working alongside the most dangerous person in the building, and they never saw it coming. If you want to see how far this story reaches, drop a comment with your city below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The emergency department smelled like disinfectant and panic. Hannah Blake moved through it with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen worse. Much worse. She kept her head down, her ID badge flipped backward so no one could read the temp agency logo, and her hands busy. That was the trick. Stay busy, stay invisible. New girl. A charge nurse with a tight bun and a voice like gravel barked from behind the triage desk. You're on 4 tonight. ICU overflow. Hannah nodded without looking up. Got it. And stay out of room 412. We've got it handled. That made her pause, just for a second. What's in 412? The charge nurse's expression soured. A problem. Security's been up there twice already. Just stay out of it. Hannah didn't ask again. She took the assignment sheet, grabbed a stethoscope from the supply cart, and headed for the elevator. The doors closed with a soft chime, sealing her into the cramped steel box. She watched the floor numbers climb. 1, 2, 3. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to be annoying. When the doors opened on 4, the noise hit her first. Monitors beeping in overlapping rhythms, a phone ringing somewhere down the hall. A man's voice, low, sharp, angry, coming from the far end of the corridor. Room 412. Hannah walked toward it. A resident stood outside the door, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He glanced up when she approached. You the temp? Yeah. Turn around. You're not going in there. She tilted her head slightly, eyes flat. Why not? Because he's violent, uncooperative, and probably going to code before morning anyway. We've got sedation ordered, but he keeps fighting it. Security's got him restrained, but... The resident shrugged. It's a mess. Let someone else deal with it. Hannah looked past him, through the narrow window in the door. She could see the outline of a man on the bed, wrists cuffed to the rails, chest heaving. His face was turned away, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his muscles locked every time someone came near. What's his diagnosis? She asked. The resident blinked. What? Diagnosis. Why's he here? Traumatic brain injury, possible internal bleeding, multiple contusions. Came in unconscious 2 days ago. Woke up swinging. He smirked like it was funny. Guy's lucky he didn't get tased. Hannah didn't smile. Who brought him in? Anonymous drop, no ID, no next of kin. We've been calling him John Doe. She nodded slowly, then reached for the door handle. The resident stepped in front of her. I just told you. I heard you. Then you know you're not. She met his eyes. Didn't blink, didn't flinch. Just waited. He stepped aside. Hannah pushed the door open and walked in. The room was smaller than she expected. 1 bed, 1 chair, 1 window with the blinds drawn. The man on the bed turned his head at the sound of the door closing. His eyes locked onto hers immediately. Dark, sharp, calculating. Not confused, not dazed, aware. Another one, he muttered, voice rough. What now? More sedatives? Another useless scan? Hannah didn't answer. She crossed the room slowly, hands visible, movements deliberate. She stopped at the foot of the bed and looked him over. Not as a nurse, as someone who'd spent years reading people in high-stress situations. His breathing was controlled despite the restraints. His posture was defensive but not panicked, and the way he tracked her movement, left hand, right hand, distance to the door, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't some random trauma patient. You military? She asked quietly. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. What's it to you? Just a question. I don't answer questions. She nodded. Fair enough. She moved to the monitor, checked his vitals. Heart rate elevated but steady. Blood pressure high. Oxygen saturation normal. She made a note on the chart, then turned back to him. You've been fighting the staff. They keep trying to put me under. Because you keep fighting them. Because I don't trust them. Hannah set the chart down. You trust me? He laughed, bitter, short. Hell no. Good. You shouldn't. She pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. But I'm not here to sedate you, restrain you, or make your life harder. I'm here to keep you alive through the night. So if you want to keep throwing punches at people who are trying to help, that's your call. But if you want answers, I suggest you start talking. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he leaned back against the pillow. What's your name? Hannah. That your real name? She almost smiled. Is John Doe yours? He didn't answer. She stood, checked the IV line, adjusted the flow rate. You've got internal bruising, possible fractures, and a concussion that should have knocked you out for days. But you're awake, alert, and fighting like someone who's been trained to survive. So I'll ask again, you military? Former. Branch? He hesitated. Army. Ranger? Special Forces? Another pause. Delta. Hannah's hand stilled on the IV bag. She turned slowly, met his eyes again. When? Why does it matter? Because I need to know if you're the kind of soldier who follows orders or the kind who breaks them. His jaw tightened. I followed them, right up until they got my team killed. The room went quiet, just the hum of the ventilation system and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Hannah exhaled slowly. Where? Afghanistan, 3 years ago. We were running extraction for a high-value target. Intel said the compound was clear. It wasn't. His voice went flat, distant. We walked into an ambush, lost 6 men in under 3 minutes. Only 2 of us made it out. And the other one? Dead. Last year, car accident. He looked away. Except it wasn't an accident. Hannah's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral. You think someone's cleaning house. I know they are. She crossed her arms. And now you're here. Anonymous drop, no ID, no records. Convenient. Too convenient. So what are you going to do about it? He met her eyes again, and this time there was something colder there. Something harder. Survive. Then find out who gave the order. Hannah nodded slowly. She turned, checked the monitors one more time, then moved toward the door. Hey! She stopped, hand on the handle. You didn't ask my name. She glanced back. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. He was quiet for a beat. Then, Garrett Cross. Hannah nodded. All right, Garrett, get some rest. I'll be back in an hour. She stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. The resident was gone. The hallway was empty except for a janitor mopping the far end of the corridor. Hannah walked back to the nurse's station, logged into the system, and pulled up Garrett Cross's file. Everything matched what he'd told her. Trauma admission, no ID, no insurance, no next of kin. But there was one thing that didn't fit. A medication order, entered 2 hours ago by a doctor she didn't recognize. High-dose sedative, scheduled for 0200, enough to put him under for hours. Maybe longer. Hannah checked the name on the order. Dr. William Falk. She ran a search. No results, no staff profile, no medical license on file. Her stomach tightened. She pulled up the security footage from the 4th floor, scrubbed back to the time the order was entered. The angle was bad, but she could make out a figure in a white coat at the nurse's station, typing at the terminal. Male, average height, ball cap pulled low. Not a doctor. Hannah closed the screen, cleared her search history, and stood. She walked back to room 412, knocked once, and entered without waiting for a response. Garrett looked up, surprised. That was fast. Hannah locked the door behind her. We need to talk. He frowned. About what? She moved to the bedside, leaned in close, and kept her voice low. Someone just ordered a sedative strong enough to put you in a coma. The doctor who signed off on it doesn't exist, and the person who entered it wasn't hospital staff. Garrett's expression went cold. When? 2 hours from now. Oh, 200. He pulled against the restraints, testing them. Get me out of these. Not yet. Hannah straightened, thinking fast. If I cut you loose now, security locks down the floor. We won't make it 10 feet. Then what's your plan? We wait. Let them think you're sedated, then we move. And if they come early? Hannah's hand drifted to the pocket of her scrubs where she'd slipped a scalpel from the supply cart. Then we improvise. Garrett studied her for a long moment. You're not just a nurse, are you? She didn't answer. Who are you? Hannah met his eyes, her voice steady. Former Army, combat medic. Special Operations Medical Element. Attached to Delta for 3 tours. His eyes widened slightly. Afghanistan? Yeah. When? 2019 to 2022. He went still. What operation? Hannah's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. Clearwater. The color drained from his face. You're lying! I'm not. Clearwater was classified. Only... He stopped, breathing hard. Only the team and the support element knew the op name. I know. You were there? His voice cracked. You were there when we... Yes. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Garrett's hands curled into fists. Then you know what happened. You know they set us up. Hannah nodded slowly. I suspected, but I couldn't prove it. Why not? Because I was ordered to stay quiet. They buried the after-action report, reassigned everyone who was involved, and when I pushed back, they discharged me early. Medical reasons. She said it like a curse. I spent 2 years trying to find out who gave the order. Came up empty every time. Garrett's jaw clenched. And now? Now you're here. And someone wants you dead before you can talk. He stared at her, and for the first time since she'd walked in, she saw fear. Not for himself, for what it meant. They're still cleaning up, he said quietly. After 3 years, they're still cleaning up. Hannah nodded. Which means whatever you saw, whatever you know, it's big enough to kill for. So what do we do? She checked her watch. 00:15, less than 2 hours. We get you out of here, then we figure out who's pulling the strings. Garrett looked at the restraints, then back at her. You sure about this? Hannah's expression didn't change. I walked away once. I'm not doing it again. He nodded slowly. All right, what's the play? Hannah moved to the IV, adjusted the drip. First, we make it look like the sedative worked. I'll log the dose, fake the vitals. Then I'll come back at 01:45, cut you loose, and we take the service elevator to the basement. From there, we use the loading dock exit. No cameras, no security. And if someone checks on me before then? They won't. Overnight staff is stretched thin. As long as the monitors look stable, no one's coming in here. Garrett nodded. What about after we're out? Where do we go? Hannah paused. She hadn't thought that far ahead. One step at a time. Fair enough. She turned toward the door, then stopped. Garrett? Yeah? If this goes sideways, if they catch us before we get out... I know, he said quietly. We don't get a second chance. Hannah nodded. Then she unlocked the door and stepped back into the hallway. The next hour crawled. Hannah moved through her rounds like a ghost, checking vitals, charting meds, avoiding eye contact. At 01:30, she logged the sedative dose in Garrett's chart, falsified the timestamps, and looped the monitor feed so it looked like he was under. Then she waited. At 01:45, she grabbed a supply bag, stuffed it with gauze, saline, and a pair of trauma shears, and headed back to room 412. The hallway was empty. The lights were dimmed. The only sound was the faint hum of the ventilation system. Hannah slipped inside, locked the door, and moved to the bed. Garrett was awake, eyes sharp. We good? For now. She pulled out the shears and cut through the restraints. He sat up slowly, testing his balance. His face was pale, but his movements were steady. Can you walk? She asked. Yeah. Good. Follow me. Stay quiet. Don't stop for anything. They moved into the hallway. Hannah led the way, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the main corridor. They reached the service elevator without incident. She hit the button. The doors opened. They stepped inside. The elevator descended. Floor 3, Floor 2, Floor 1. The doors opened onto the basement level, a maze of storage rooms, laundry carts, and industrial equipment. Hannah moved quickly, threading through the narrow corridors toward the loading dock. Garrett stayed close, limping slightly but keeping pace. They reached the exit. Hannah pushed the door open and froze. A man stood in the loading bay, arms crossed, blocking the way. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit. No hospital ID, no uniform. "Hello, Hannah," he said calmly. She didn't move. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Someone who's been waiting for you to make a mistake." He glanced past her at Garrett. "And you brought him right to me. Convenient." Garrett stepped forward, fists clenched. "Who sent you?" The man ignored him, kept his eyes on Hannah. "You should have stayed out of it. Could have walked away clean, but you just had to play hero." Hannah's hand drifted to the scalpel in her pocket. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Loose ends tied up, witnesses eliminated." He reached into his jacket. Hannah moved first. She lunged forward, slashed with the scalpel. The man blocked, grabbed her wrist, twisted. She pivoted, drove her knee into his ribs. He grunted, shoved her back. Garrett charged. The man turned, caught him with an elbow to the jaw. Garrett stumbled. The man pulled a sidearm, leveled it. Hannah tackled him from the side. They hit the ground hard. The gun skittered across the concrete. She scrambled for it. The man grabbed her ankle, yanked her back. She kicked, caught him in the face. He cursed, let go. She grabbed the gun, rolled, aimed. The man was already gone. Running into the shadows. Hannah stood, breathing hard, blood pounding in her ears. She looked at Garrett. He was on his feet, holding his jaw, but alive. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah. You?" "Fine." She checked the gun, full magazine. She tucked it into her waistband, then looked toward the exit. "We need to move, now." They ran. Out of the loading bay, into the parking lot, across the street, into the maze of alleys behind the hospital. They didn't stop until they reached an abandoned warehouse 2 blocks away. Hannah pulled Garrett inside, slammed the door, and leaned against it, gasping for air. Garrett sank to the floor, head in his hands. "What the hell just happened?" Hannah checked the gun again, then looked at him. "We just became targets." He looked up, eyes wild. "Who was that guy?" "I don't know. But he knew my name, knew we'd try to leave, which means—" "They've been watching us the whole time," Garrett finished. Hannah nodded. "Yeah." He stood, pacing now. "So what do? We can't go back, can't go to the cops, can't—" "We finish it," Hannah said quietly. He stopped. "What?" She met his eyes, her voice hard. "We find out who gave the order, we expose them, and we make sure they can't do this to anyone else." Garrett stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. How?" Hannah didn't answer right away. She was already thinking 3 steps ahead, planning, calculating. Finally, she looked at him. "You said you had intel from the ambush, something they didn't want you to see." He nodded. "Yeah, communications logs, command-level traffic. I copied them before we went dark." "Where are they?" "Hidden, safe." "Can you get them?" He hesitated. "Yeah, but if I surface, they'll know." "Then we do it fast, get the logs, upload them somewhere they can't bury, and disappear before they close in." Garrett nodded slowly. "And if it doesn't work?" Hannah's expression didn't change. "Then we go down swinging." He looked at her for a long moment, then he held out his hand. She took it. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The city lights flickered through the broken windows. And somewhere in the shadows, the man in the dark suit made a phone call. "They're gone," he said quietly, but not for long. On the other end of the line, a voice responded, calm, cold, authoritative. "Find them, and this time, make sure there's nothing left." The line went dead. The man in the dark suit pocketed his phone and stepped back into the shadows of the parking structure across from the warehouse. He wasn't alone. 3 others emerged from a black SUV, weapons drawn, moving with the kind of precision that came from years of private contracts and deniable operations. They didn't speak. Hand signals only. 2 circled left. 1 went right. The man in the suit stayed back, watching the warehouse entrance through a thermal scope. Inside, Hannah pressed her ear to the rusted metal door, listening. The sirens had faded, but the silence that followed felt worse. She turned back to Garrett, who was leaning against a concrete pillar, breathing hard, his hand pressed to his side. "You're bleeding," she said. He glanced down. His shirt was dark with it. "Must have caught something when we ran." Hannah crossed the space between them, lifted his shirt. A deep gash along his ribs, probably from when he'd hit the pavement outside the loading dock. Not fatal, but messy. "We need to stop this." "Later." "Now." She pulled gauze from the supply bag she'd grabbed, pressed it against the wound. He flinched but didn't pull away. She worked quickly, wrapping the gauze tight, securing it with medical tape. Her hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from too many field dressings under fire. "You always this stubborn?" Garrett asked through gritted teeth. "Only when people try to bleed out on me." He almost smiled. Almost. Hannah finished, stepped back, checked the door again. Still quiet. Too quiet. "We can't stay here." "Where do we go?" She thought fast. The hospital was compromised. The police wouldn't help, not without proof. And even then, if this thing went as high as she suspected, local cops wouldn't touch it. They needed leverage. They needed the logs Garrett had mentioned. "Where are they?" she asked. "The comms logs." Garrett hesitated. "Storage unit, north side of the city, industrial district." "How far?" 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're on foot." Hannah checked the gun she'd taken. 15 rounds. No spare mag. Not enough for a firefight, but better than nothing. "We move now. Stay low. Avoid main streets." Garrett pushed off the pillar, tested his weight. He was steady, but favoring his left side. "You think they're out there?" "I know they are." He nodded, jaw tight. "Then let's not make it easy." Hannah cracked the door, scanned the alley. Empty. She slipped out, Garrett right behind her. They moved through the back streets, sticking to the darkest corners, avoiding streetlights and passing cars. The city hummed around them, distant traffic, the occasional shout, the low thrum of a freight train somewhere to the east. Normal sounds. But nothing felt normal anymore. They cut through an abandoned lot overgrown with weeds, then down a narrow passage between two condemned buildings. Hannah kept her hand on the gun, eyes sweeping every shadow, every doorway. Garrett moved beside her, quieter than she expected for someone with a fresh wound. He'd done this before. Moved through hostile territory. Survived when others didn't. "You ever think about getting out?" she asked quietly as they paused at the edge of an intersection. "Out of what?" "All of it. The military. The missions. The lies." Garrett was quiet for a moment. "Every day." "But you didn't." "No." "Why not?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Because I thought finishing the job mattered more than staying safe." Hannah didn't respond. She understood. She'd made the same choice, over and over, until the choice was made for her. They crossed the intersection and entered another alley. Halfway down, Garrett stopped, held up a hand. Hannah froze. She heard it a second later, footsteps, deliberate, measured, coming from behind. She turned slowly. A figure stood at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the streetlight. Male, medium build, hands at his sides, but ready. "Keep moving," Hannah whispered. "He'll follow." "I know." They walked, faster now. The footsteps matched their pace, not closing the distance, but not falling back either, tracking them. Garrett glanced over his shoulder. "How many you think there are?" "More than one." "Great." They reached the end of the alley, turned left onto a wider street. A few cars passed, headlights cutting through the dark. Hannah scanned for options, a 24-hour diner across the street. Lit up, windows full of late-night regulars, too exposed. A bus stop further down. Empty. No cover. Then she saw it. A parking garage. Entrance half a block ahead. Dark. Multi-level. Plenty of places to lose a tail. "There," she said, nodding toward it. Garrett saw it, nodded. They picked up the pace, not quite running, but close. Behind them, the footsteps quickened. They reached the garage, ducked inside. The air was colder here, heavy with the smell of oil and concrete. Rows of parked cars stretched into the shadows. Hannah led them up the ramp to the second level, then cut right between a delivery van and a sedan. They crouched low, listening. The footsteps entered the garage. Slow. Methodical. The man wasn't rushing. He knew they were trapped. Hannah checked the gun again. 15 rounds. She looked at Garrett. Can you shoot? With what? She pulled the scalpel from her pocket, handed it to him. If he gets close. Garrett took it, turned it over in his hand. You're full of surprises. Stay quiet. They waited. The footsteps moved closer. Level 1. Then the ramp. Ascending. Hannah's pulse hammered in her ears. She tightened her grip on the gun, steadied her breathing. The footsteps reached the second level. Stopped. Silence. Then a voice, calm and measured. I know you're here. Hannah didn't move, didn't breathe. You can't run from this, the voice continued. You know that, right? Wherever you go, we'll find you. It's just a matter of time. Garrett's hand tightened around the scalpel. Hannah shook her head slightly. Not yet. The footsteps moved again, closer, passing the van, 10 feet away. 5. Hannah shifted her weight, ready to spring. The man appeared around the edge of the sedan, weapon raised. Hannah moved first. She surged up, grabbed his wrist, twisted the gun away. He reacted fast, drove his elbow into her ribs. She gasped, staggered back. He turned the gun on her. Garrett lunged from the side, drove the scalpel into the man's shoulder. The man screamed, dropped the gun. Hannah kicked it away, then slammed her fist into his jaw. He went down hard, clutching his shoulder. Hannah grabbed the gun, leveled it at his head. Who sent you? The man spat blood, glared up at her. You think I'm telling you anything? Wrong answer. She cocked the hammer. He laughed, harsh and bitter. You won't shoot. You're one of the good guys, right? Follow the rules. Do the right thing. Hannah didn't blink. I was. Then people like you made me stop caring about rules. The man's smile faltered. Last chance, Hannah said. Who gave the order? He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he shook his head. Even if I told you, it wouldn't matter. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet. Hannah's finger hovered over the trigger. Every instinct screamed to pull it. End the threat. Move on. But she didn't. Instead, she lowered the gun, stepped back. Garrett, zip ties. Garrett rummaged through the supply bag, pulled out a set of restraints she'd grabbed from the hospital. They bound the man's wrists and ankles, gagged him with a strip of gauze, then dragged him behind a concrete pillar. He'll get loose eventually, Garrett said. I know, but not soon enough to warn anyone. Hannah picked up the man's gun, checked the magazine. Full. She tucked it into her waistband next to the first one. 2 weapons now. Better odds. They moved quickly, exited the garage through a side stairwell, and emerged onto a quieter street. The industrial district loomed ahead, rows of warehouses, storage facilities, and shipping yards, all bathed in the orange glow of sodium lights. Which one? Hannah asked. Garrett scanned the area, then pointed to a low-slung building at the far end of the block. Blue door. Unit 47. They crossed the street, keeping to the shadows. The storage facility was old, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Perfect for hiding things you didn't want found. Garrett led them to the entrance, punched a code into the keypad. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The interior smelled like dust and mildew. Narrow corridors lined with metal roll-up doors stretched in both directions. Garrett moved left, counting units under his breath. 43, 45, 47. He stopped, pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked the door. It rolled up with a metallic screech that echoed down the hallway. Inside was a small space, maybe 10 by 10, filled with cardboard boxes and plastic bins. Garrett knelt beside one of the bins, popped the lid. Inside were clothes, old gear, a few books. He dug deeper, pulled out a metal lockbox. He opened it with a second key. Inside was a thumb drive. Hannah stared at it. That's it? That's what they've been killing for? Garrett held it up to the light. Everything I pulled from the command server the night of the ambush. Comms traffic, authorization codes, names. He looked at her. Proof that someone at the top knew we were walking into a trap. Hannah's stomach tightened. You're sure? I'm sure. She exhaled slowly. Then we need to get this public. Fast. How? We can't just upload it. They'll trace it, shut it down before it spreads. Hannah thought for a moment. We don't upload it ourselves. We give it to someone who can distribute it faster than they can contain it. Who? She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts. Most were dead numbers. Old friends who'd moved on, former colleagues who didn't want to be found. Then she stopped on one name, Marcus Hale, investigative journalist, specializing in military corruption and government cover-ups. She'd met him once, years ago, at a veterans advocacy event. He'd given her his card, told her to reach out if she ever had a story worth telling. She'd never called. Until now. She dialed the number. It rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Yeah? Marcus Hale? Who's asking? Hannah Blake, we met a few years ago. Veterans event in Baltimore. There was a pause. I remember. What do you want? I've got a story for you. It's 3 a.m. I know, and if you want the biggest military scandal of the decade, you'll meet me in an hour. Another pause. Longer this time. Where? Hannah glanced at Garrett, who nodded. Lincoln Park, East Entrance, come alone. This better be real. It is. She hung up. Garrett closed the lockbox, pocketed the thumb drive. You trust this guy? No, but I trust his ambition. He's built a career on exposing people who think they're untouchable. He won't pass this up. And if he sells us out? Then we improvise. Again. They locked the unit, exited the facility, and headed toward the park. The streets were emptier now, the late-night crowd thinning out. They walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Hannah's mind raced through scenarios. Best case, Marcus published the story, it went viral, and the people responsible went down. Worst case, they were intercepted before they ever reached the park. She didn't let herself think about the worst case. They reached Lincoln Park just before 4. The east entrance was deserted, just a wrought iron gate and a gravel path disappearing into the trees. Hannah and Garrett waited in the shadows, watching the street. 10 minutes later, a sedan pulled up. A man got out, tall, lean, mid-40s, wearing jeans and a wrinkled button-down. He looked around, nervous, then walked toward the gate. Hannah stepped into the light. Marcus? He stopped, eyes narrowing. Hannah Blake? Yeah. He looked her over, then glanced at Garrett. Who's he? A friend. Does your friend have a name? Garrett didn't answer. Marcus frowned. All right. You said you had a story. Hannah held up the thumb drive. Everything you need to take down a military contracting operation that's been covering up war crimes and killing witnesses for the past 3 years. Marcus's eyes widened. You're serious. Dead serious. He reached for the drive. Hannah pulled it back. Not yet. First, I need guarantees. What kind of guarantees? You publish this within 24 hours. You don't name us as sources, and you make damn sure it spreads too far for them to bury. Marcus crossed his arms. That's a tall order. Can you do it or not? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, but I need to verify the data first. Make sure it's legit. You've got 2 hours. After that, we're gone. Marcus pulled out a laptop from his car, set it up on a bench under a streetlight. Hannah handed him the drive. He plugged it in, opened the files. His expression shifted as he scrolled through the documents, command logs, encrypted emails, financial records. His fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing names, checking dates. After 20 minutes, he looked up. This is real. I know. Do you have any idea what this implicates? We're talking generals, defense contractors, members of Congress. I know, Hannah repeated. That's why we're giving it to you. Marcus stared at her. You realize they'll come after you. Once this goes public, they'll know who leaked it. Let them come. He looked at Garrett. You feel the same way? Garrett met his eyes. I've been running for 3 years. I'm done running. Marcus nodded slowly. All right, I'll do it. But you two need to disappear. Tonight. Don't go home. Don't contact anyone you know. Just vanish. Hannah took the thumb drive back, made a copy onto a second drive she'd brought, then handed the original to Marcus. You've got what you need. Use it. Marcus pocketed the drive, started packing up his laptop. Where will you go? Better if you don't know. He paused, then nodded. Be careful. You too. He got back in his car and drove off. Hannah and Garrett watched until the taillights disappeared. Now what? Garrett asked. Now we wait. See if he keeps his word. They left the park, moved deeper into the city. Hannah found a rundown motel on the outskirts, the kind that took cash and didn't ask for ID. She paid for a room, and they slipped inside, locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle. The room was small, dingy, smelling of old smoke and cheap detergent. One bed, one window, one way out. Garrett sat on the edge of the bed, wincing as he shifted his weight. Hannah pulled out the medical supplies, checked his wound again. The bleeding had slowed, but the gauze was soaked through. She cleaned it, applied fresh dressing, then stepped back. "You need real stitches," she said. "I'll live." "For now." He looked up at her, exhausted but steady. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not walking away." Hannah didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. She just nodded, then moved to the window, peered through the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for a few rusted-out cars. No movement, no headlights. "Get some sleep," she said. I'll keep watch." "You need rest too." "I'm fine." Garrett didn't argue. He lay back on the bed, closed his eyes. Within minutes, his breathing evened out. Hannah sat in the chair by the window, the gun resting in her lap. She watched the parking lot, watched the street beyond, watched for any sign that they'd been followed. Hours passed. The sky outside began to lighten, the deep black fading to gray. Hannah's eyes burned, but she didn't let herself sleep, not yet. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stories live." Front page. Every major outlet picking it up. "You did it." Hannah exhaled. It was done. The truth was out. But she didn't feel relief, just the weight of what came next. Because people like the ones they were up against didn't just accept defeat. They fought back. And they fought dirty. She was about to wake Garrett when headlights swept across the parking lot. A black SUV, moving slow, searching. Hannah's hand tightened on the gun. She moved to the bed, shook Garrett awake. "We've got company." He sat up fast, eyes alert. "How many?" "At least one vehicle. Could be more." They moved to the window together, watched as the SUV circled the lot. It stopped 3 spaces away from their room. The engine cut off. The doors opened. 4 men stepped out, armed, moving with purpose. Hannah and Garrett exchanged a look. No words needed. They both knew what this was. The final play. Hannah grabbed the second gun, handed it to Garrett. "Back door." "There isn't one." "Then we make one." She moved to the bathroom, opened the small window above the toilet. Barely wide enough for a person, but it would have to work. She climbed through first, dropped into the alley behind the motel. Garrett followed, grunting as his ribs hit the frame. They landed hard, rolled, came up running. Behind them, the motel room door exploded inward. Shouts, boots on cheap carpet. Hannah and Garrett sprinted down the alley, turned left onto a side street. A second SUV screeched around the corner ahead, cutting them off. They pivoted, ran the other direction. Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off the pavement. Hannah returned fire. 2 quick shots. One of the men went down. They ducked into another alley, vaulted a chain-link fence, landed in the back lot of a closed auto shop. More gunfire. Closer now. "They're hurting us," Garrett panted. "I know." Hannah scanned the area. Warehouses to the left, open street to the right. A drainage canal straight ahead, concrete sloping down into darkness. "There," she said, pointing to the canal. They slid down the embankment, hit the bottom hard. The canal was dry, littered with trash and debris. They ran along the bottom, the walls rising on either side, trapping them in a narrow corridor. Footsteps echoed above, voices shouting orders. Then ahead, a figure dropped into the canal, blocking their path. The man from the parking garage, the one in the suit. He raised his weapon, aimed at Hannah's chest. "End of the line," he said. Hannah stopped, Garrett beside her. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The man smiled. "You really thought you could win?" Hannah met his eyes. "We already did." His smile faltered. "What?" "The story's out. Every news outlet in the country has it. You can kill us, but you can't bury the truth anymore." The man's expression darkened. "Then I'll settle for making you pay." He pulled the trigger. The shot never came. A flash of movement from above. Something metallic sailed through the air and clattered at the man's feet. He looked down. A smoke grenade. His eyes went wide. It detonated. Thick white smoke billowed through the canal, swallowing everything. Hannah grabbed Garrett's arm, yanked him backward. They stumbled through the haze, half blind, ears ringing from the sharp crack of the grenade. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes pierced the smoke. Bullets ricocheted off concrete. Hannah fired back twice, aiming at shadows, then pulled Garrett into a drainage pipe jutting from the canal wall. They crawled inside, the pipe barely wide enough for their shoulders, water slicked and reeking of sewage. Behind them, voices shouted. Boots pounded concrete. The smoke began to clear. "Move," Hannah hissed. They crawled faster, knees scraping metal, hands sliding in slime. The pipe angled upward, then opened into a wider junction. Hannah pulled herself out, helped Garrett up. They were in some kind of maintenance tunnel, concrete walls, rusted pipes overhead, dim emergency lights flickering at intervals. "Who threw that grenade?" Garrett gasped. "I don't know." "Someone's helping us. Or setting us up." A voice echoed down the tunnel. Calm. Female. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." Hannah spun, gun raised. A woman stepped into the light. Late 30s, dark hair tied back, tactical vest over civilian clothes. No insignia, no ID. But the way she moved, controlled, efficient, screamed military. "Who are you?" Hannah demanded. The woman raised her hand slightly, showing she was unarmed. "Someone who read Marcus's article 20 minutes after it posted. Someone who knows what happens to people who blow the whistle on Cordovan Solutions." Hannah's blood went cold. Cordovan. Yeah, the private military contractor with more government contracts than the Pentagon wants to admit. The one that orchestrated the ambush that killed Garrett's team. She looked at Garrett. And the one that's been cleaning up witnesses ever since. Garrett stepped forward. "How do you know about Cordovan?" "Because I used to work for them." Silence. Just the drip of water somewhere in the dark. Hannah kept the gun level. "Why help us?" The woman's expression hardened. "Because I got out 2 years ago when I realized what they were doing. I thought walking away was enough. It wasn't. They don't let you just leave." She pulled back her sleeve, showed a scar running from wrist to elbow. "They sent someone to remind me that silence is permanent." "You're still alive," Garrett said. "So are you. For now." She lowered her hands. "My name's Kira Voss, former intelligence analyst. I've been tracking Cordovan's operation since I left, building a case, gathering evidence, but I couldn't get anyone to listen. Then your story broke." Hannah studied her. Every instinct said not to trust her, but the smoke grenade had bought them time, and if she was lying, she'd already had a dozen chances to put them down. "What do you want?" Hannah asked. "Same thing you do, bring them down, all the way." Kira glanced back toward the canal. "But we need to move. They'll sweep this tunnel in under 5 minutes. Hannah looked at Garrett. He nodded slightly. She lowered the gun. "Lead the way." Kira turned and moved deeper into the tunnel. Hannah and Garrett followed, weapons ready, eyes scanning the dark. The tunnel stretched for what felt like miles, branching off into smaller passages, each one darker than the last. Kira navigated without hesitation, like she'd mapped every inch. They emerged in a subway maintenance area, concrete platforms littered with abandoned equipment. Kira led them up a service ladder, through a locked gate she opened with a key she shouldn't have had, and into the basement of an old office building. She stopped at a reinforced door, punched in a code. The lock clicked. Inside was a makeshift operations center, monitors, laptops, whiteboards covered in photos and names connected by red string. A small arsenal in the corner, enough gear to run a black op. "Welcome to my office," Kira said. Hannah scanned the walls. Photos of men in suits, military personnel, government officials, all connected back to one name written in bold at the center, Cordovan Solutions. "How long have you been doing this?" Hannah asked. 2 years, longer if you count the time I spent inside. Kira moved to one of the monitors, pulled up files. Cordovan isn't just a PMC. They're an international network. Arms deals, destabilization ops, assassinations dressed up as accidents. They've got people embedded in defense departments, intelligence agencies, congressional offices. And the man running it all? She clicked a key. A photo appeared on screen. A man in his 60s, silver hair, sharp suit, cold eyes. The caption read, "Nathaniel Cross, CEO, Cordovan Solutions." Garrett went pale. "Cross." Kira glanced at him. "You know him?" "He signed off on our deployment orders, personally." Garrett's voice shook. I saw his name on the mission brief. I thought he was just some Pentagon liaison. He was. 20 years ago. Then he went private. Built Cordovan from the ground up. Now he's worth billions and untouchable. Kira pulled up another file. The ambush that killed your team, Cordovan orchestrated it. They fed bad intel to your command, set you up to walk into a trap, then blamed it on faulty intelligence. Why? Hannah asked. Because your team stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see. Kira opened a classified report. Pages of redacted text, satellite images, shipping manifests. Cordovan was running weapons to insurgent groups in Afghanistan, keeping the conflict alive, prolonging the war, more contracts, more money. Your team found a cache of American-made rifles in an enemy compound, started asking questions, so Cordovan silenced them. Garrett's hands curled into fists. 6 men died because of money. 6 men died because they were inconvenient. Kira closed the file. And Cordovan's been cleaning up ever since. Your buddy, who died in the car accident? Brake line cut. The officer who tried to file a report? Heart attack. 52 years old, perfect health. She looked at Garrett. You were next. They just needed you in a controlled environment to make it look natural. Hannah's jaw tightened. The hospital. Yeah, easy to stage a medical error. No one asks questions when a patient with head trauma doesn't wake up. Kira turned to Hannah. And you walked right into the middle of it. The moment you pulled him out, you became a loose end. Hannah didn't respond. She was running scenarios, calculating risks. Cordovan had resources, manpower, political cover. Taking them on directly was suicide, but letting them walk meant more deaths, more cover-ups. What's your plan? Hannah asked. Kira smiled grimly. We finish what Marcus started. He exposed the ambush. Now we expose everything else. Cordovan's financial records, their client list, every dirty deal they've made in the last decade. We dump it all at once. Too much for them to bury. You have that kind of access? Not yet, but I know where to get it. Kira pulled up a map on one of the monitors. A building complex on the outskirts of the city. Cordovan's regional headquarters, 3rd floor, secure server room. Everything we need is in there. Garrett stared at the map. That place is a fortress. I know. You're talking about a break-in. Armed guards, biometric locks, surveillance everywhere. I know. We'll never make it out. Kira met his eyes. Not if we go in loud, but if we're smart, if we time it right, we can ghost in and out before they know we're there. Hannah studied the map. Entry points, security checkpoints, exit routes. It was risky, bordering on insane, but it was the only play they had. When? She asked. Tomorrow night, there's a gala. Cordovan's hosting a fundraiser for some defense lobby group. Half the building will be empty. Security will be focused on the event. And the other half will still be a problem. Kira pulled up schematics. But I've got a way in. A maintenance access tunnel that runs under the building, comes up in the parking garage. From there, we take the service elevator to the 3rd floor, bypass the biometrics with a cloned key card, and access the servers. How long to download everything? Garrett asked. 10 minutes, maybe 15. That's a long time to stay invisible. Which is why we need a distraction. Hannah crossed her arms. What kind of distraction? Kira's smile widened. The kind that makes everyone look the other way. They spent the next 18 hours prepping. Kira had gear, tactical vests, earpieces, cloned ID badges. She walked them through the plan step by step, drilling entry points and contingencies until Hannah could navigate the building blindfolded. Garrett ran weapons checks, field stripped the rifles, tested the suppressors. Hannah studied the server layout, memorized the encryption protocols, practiced the download procedure. By the time night fell, they were ready. They moved out at 2100 hours. 3 of them in a stolen van, dressed in maintenance uniforms, faces obscured by ball caps. Kira drove. Hannah rode shotgun. Garrett sat in back, checking his rifle one last time. Remember, Kira said as they approached the building, we're ghosts. No contact unless absolutely necessary. We get in, get the data, get out. And if something goes wrong, Garrett asked, then we improvise. They parked 2 blocks away, entered the maintenance tunnel through a service hatch hidden behind a dumpster. The tunnel was narrow, damp, lit by flickering bulbs. They moved single file, Kira in front, Hannah in the middle, Garrett covering the rear. The tunnel ended at a sealed door. Kira swiped the cloned card. The lock clicked. They entered the parking garage, moved between rows of expensive cars, reached the service elevator. Kira hit the button. The elevator descended, doors opening with a soft chime. They stepped inside. She swiped the card again, pressed 3. The elevator climbed. Hannah's heart pounded. Her hand rested on the grip of her sidearm, ready. The doors opened onto a dimly lit hallway. Empty. Silent. Kira led them left, past offices with frosted glass doors, conference rooms dark and vacant. They reached the server room at the end of the hall. Kira swiped the card. Red light. Access denied. She tried again. Red light. Problem, she muttered. Hannah glanced back down the hall. Still empty, but for how long? What's wrong? They updated the security. The card's not registering. Garrett moved to the door, examined the lock. Can you bypass it? Not without triggering an alarm. Hannah thought fast. Then we trigger it somewhere else. Kira looked at her. What? Pull the fire alarm 2 floors down. Security responds, systems reset for evacuation protocol. We've got maybe 60 seconds before they realize it's fake. Kira hesitated, then nodded. Do it. Hannah sprinted back to the elevator, took it down to the first floor. She found a fire alarm near the lobby, smashed the glass, pulled the lever. Sirens wailed. Lights flashed. She ran back to the elevator, hit 3. The doors opened. Kira was already inside the server room, Garrett covering the door. Hannah slipped in, closed it behind her. The room was cold, rows of servers humming, blinking lights casting everything in blue. Kira moved to a terminal, plugged in a drive, started typing. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. How long? Hannah asked. 12 minutes. Too long. Hannah moved to the door, peered through the small window. The hallway was still empty, but she could hear voices now. Footsteps. Security responding to the alarm. They're coming, she said. Kira didn't look up. Keep them out. Garrett positioned himself beside the door, rifle ready. Hannah drew her sidearm, checked the chamber, locked and loaded. The footsteps grew louder, closer. 2 guards appeared at the end of the hall, flashlights sweeping the corridor. Server room's down here, one of them said. Hannah's pulse spiked. Kira? 8 minutes. The guards reached the door. One swiped his card. The lock beeped. Hannah stepped back, aimed at the door. It opened. The guard stepped through, saw Hannah, started to shout. Garrett grabbed him from behind, hand over his mouth, dragged him inside. The second guard rushed in, gun drawn. Hannah kicked it out of his hand, drove her elbow into his throat. He choked, staggered. Garrett hit him with the rifle butt. He went down. They zip-tied both guards, gagged them, shoved them into a corner. 6 minutes, Kira said, still typing. Hannah moved back to the door, locked it, wedged a chair under the handle. We're blown. They'll know we're here. I know. Just need a little more time. The terminal beeped. A progress bar appeared, 67% complete. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Lots of them. Garrett checked his magazine. They're coming heavy. Hannah scanned the room. 1 door, no windows, no other exits. They were trapped. Kira, we need to go, now. Almost there. The progress bar crawled forward. 74%, 81%. Pounding on the door, voices shouting, "Open up! Security!" 89%, 94%. A loud crack. The door frame splintered. 98%. The door exploded inward. 4 guards rushed in, weapons raised. 100%. Kira yanked the drive, shoved it into her vest. Got it! Hannah and Garrett opened fire. Suppressed rounds punched through the first 2 guards. They dropped. The others dove for cover behind server racks. Move! Hannah shouted. They ran for the far end of the room, where a ventilation shaft hung open near the ceiling. Garrett boosted Kira up. She climbed inside, disappeared. Hannah went next, hauled herself into the shaft. Garrett followed, pulling himself up just as gunfire raked the wall below. They crawled through the shaft, fast and frantic, metallic banging echoing around them. The shaft angled down, then opened into another corridor. They dropped out, landed hard, kept running. Alarms screamed, red lights flashed. They hit a stairwell, took the steps 3 at a time, burst through a side exit into the night. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets sparked off the pavement. They sprinted across the parking lot, vaulted a fence, disappeared into the maze of alleys behind the building. They didn't stop until they reached the van. Kira started the engine, pulled out fast. Hannah checked the rear view. No pursuit. Not yet. Garrett slumped in his seat, breathing hard. Did we get it? Kira held up the drive. Everything. Financial records, client lists, operational logs. Enough to bury Cordovon for good. Hannah exhaled. It was done. Almost. They drove back to Kira's safe house, uploaded the data to an encrypted server, then sent copies to every major news outlet, whistleblower organization, and oversight committee in the country. Within an hour, the files were spreading. By dawn, they'd be everywhere. But dawn never came. Hannah woke to the sound of shattering glass. She rolled off the couch, grabbed her gun, saw shadows moving outside the windows. "Up! Now!" she shouted. Kira and Garrett scrambled awake. The front door exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated. Smoke filled the room. Armed men poured in. Not cops. Not feds. Cordovan contractors. Hannah fired blind, heard someone scream. She dove behind the couch as bullets tore through the furniture. Garrett returned fire from the hallway. Kira threw a desk, created cover, started shooting. But there were too many. A contractor tackled Hannah from the side. They hit the floor hard, his weight crushing her. She drove her knee into his ribs, twisted, grabbed his sidearm, shot him twice. He went limp. She looked up. Kira was down, blood spreading across her shoulder. Garrett was pinned behind the overturned desk, outnumbered. This was it, the end. Then, sirens. Lots of them. The contractors hesitated, exchanged looks. One spoke into his radio. "Abort! Pull out! Now!" They retreated, dragging their wounded, disappearing into the smoke. Hannah crawled to Kira, checked the wound. Through and through. Painful, but not fatal. "You're okay. Stay with me." Kira gritted her teeth. "They found us." "I know." "How?" Hannah didn't answer. She didn't know, unless... Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're running out of places to hide, but I'm willing to make a deal. The data for your lives. Midnight, Richmond Harbor, Warehouse 9. Come alone." It was unsigned, but Hannah knew who sent it. Nathaniel Cross. Garrett limped over, saw the message. "It's a trap." "I know." "So what do we do?" Hannah stared at the screen. Every option was bad. Ignore it, they'd keep coming. Accept it, they walked into an ambush. But if Cross wanted them dead, he'd have finished them tonight, which meant he wanted something else. She looked at Garrett. "We go." "You're insane." "Probably. But it's the only way this ends." Kira struggled to sit up. "You can't trust him." "I don't. But I'm done running." Hannah stood, checked her gun. "You two stay here. Get medical attention. I'll handle Cross." Garrett grabbed her arm. "You're not going alone." "Yes, I am." "The hell you are?" He met her eyes. "You pulled me out of that hospital, saved my life. I'm not letting you walk into that warehouse by yourself." Hannah started to argue, then stopped. She saw the determination in his face, the same look he'd probably had the night of the ambush, the night his team died, and he survived. She nodded. "All right, together." They prepped fast. Vests, weapons, extra mags. Kira gave them an earpiece, told them she'd monitor from the safe house, call for backup if things went south. At 23:30, they left. Richmond Harbor was a sprawl of abandoned warehouses and rusted shipping containers. Warehouse 9 sat at the far end, isolated, overlooking the black water. Hannah and Garrett approached on foot, moving through shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, massive, dark, silent. They reached the entrance. The door was unlocked. They stepped inside. The interior was cavernous, empty except for a single figure standing in the center, backlit by a portable floodlight. Nathaniel Cross. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, perfectly calm, like he was waiting for a business meeting. "Hannah Blake, Garrett Cross," his voice echoed. "I'm glad you came." Hannah raised her gun. "We're here. Now what?" Cross smiled. "Now we talk." There's nothing to talk about. I disagree. You've caused me a considerable amount of trouble, but I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to forget all of it. The break-in, the data leak, the dead contractors. He paused. In exchange for the original drive. It's already out there, Garrett said. The whole world's seen it. True, but the original contains encrypted files, classified material that could damage national security if released. I'm sure you understand. Cross's smile faded. Give me the drive, and you walk away. Keep it, and you won't leave this building alive. Hannah's finger hovered over the trigger. You killed my team. I made a business decision. You murdered 6 men. Collateral damage. Cross's voice hardened. This is the real world, soldier. Not some fairy tale where good wins because it's good. Power wins. Money wins. I've built an empire on that truth. And you? He looked at her with pity. You're just a nurse who forgot her place. Hannah's jaw clenched. Every muscle screamed to pull the trigger. End it. But before she could, lights flooded the warehouse. Dozens of them. Tactical teams poured in from every entrance. Rifles trained, voices shouting commands. But they weren't Cordovan. They were federal agents, FBI, DOD investigators, U.S. Marshals. And leading them was a man in a dark suit with a badge clipped to his belt. He walked straight up to Cross. Nathaniel Cross, you're under arrest for conspiracy, war crimes, and murder. Cross's face went white. You have no authority. We have everything. Financial records, communications logs, witness testimony. The agent held up a tablet, showed him the screen. Your entire operation just went public, every news outlet, every congressional committee. You're done. Cross looked at Hannah, realization dawning. You planned this. Hannah lowered her gun. No, you did. The moment you killed those men. Federal agents moved in, cuffed Cross, read him his rights. He didn't struggle, just stared at Hannah as they led him away, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. The lead agent approached Hannah and Garrett. You two did good work. Dangerous, reckless, but good. Hannah nodded, too exhausted to respond. We'll need statements, full debriefs, but for now, he gestured toward the exit. You're free to go. They walked out of the warehouse into the cold night air. Sirens wailed in the distance. Flashlights swept the harbor. The whole place was crawling with feds. Garrett stopped, looked at Hannah. Is it really over? For now. What happens next? Hannah didn't answer. She didn't know. 6 months ago, she'd been working temp shifts at a hospital nobody wanted her at. Now she'd brought down one of the most powerful military contractors in the world. But none of it felt like victory. Just exhaustion. They walked toward the parking lot in silence. Behind them, unmarked cars pulled away, taking Nathaniel Cross to a fate he'd spent years avoiding. And somewhere across the city, in a dark room filled with monitors and maps, a phone rang. A voice answered. Cold, calm, familiar. Cross is compromised. Initiate Protocol Black. Burn everything. The line went dead. In the parking lot, Hannah's phone buzzed. Another message, unknown number. You think you won. You're wrong. This was never about Cross. He was just the face. The real power doesn't have a name, and it's coming for you. Hannah stared at the screen. Garrett saw her expression. What is it? She showed him the message. His face went pale. We need to... The explosion tore through Warehouse 9 behind them, a massive fireball that lit up the night sky. The shockwave knocked them to the ground. Debris rained down. Car alarms screamed. Hannah pushed herself up, ears ringing, looked back at the inferno. Every piece of evidence, every federal agent, everything, gone. Hannah's ears rang so loud she couldn't hear Garrett shouting beside her. She watched the warehouse collapse in on itself, flames licking 3 stories high, black smoke billowing into the night. She didn't need to count bodies. Everyone inside was gone. Garrett grabbed her shoulder, spun her around. His mouth moved, but the words were muffled, distant. She read his lips. We have to go. She nodded, forced her legs to move. They stumbled toward the parking lot, away from the inferno. Fire trucks screamed past them, too late to save anyone. Hannah's vision blurred at the edges, shock, adrenaline crash, or both. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other. They reached a chain-link fence at the edge of the harbor property, climbed over, dropped into an overgrown lot littered with broken pallets and rusted machinery. Garrett pulled her behind a dumpster, crouched low. They stayed there, breathing hard, watching emergency vehicles flood the scene. Hannah's hearing started to return, sirens, shouting, the roar of flames. She checked her phone. The screen was cracked from the blast, but it still worked. The message was still there. "You think you won? You're wrong. This was never about Cross. He was just the face. The real power doesn't have a name, and it's coming for you." "They blew it," Garrett said, his voice hoarse. "Killed their own people just to erase the evidence." Hannah stared at the flames. Cross wasn't in charge. What? He was middle management. A face. Someone higher gave the order to burn it all. Garrett leaned back against the dumpster, eyes closed. "Then we accomplished nothing. We exposed Cordovan. That's something. Not if the people who really run it walk away clean." Hannah didn't have an answer for that. She scrolled through her phone, pulled up news sites. The story was everywhere. Headlines screaming about corruption, military contractors, leaked documents. Cordovan's stock had already tanked. Congressional hearings were being called. But buried in the coverage was a quote from an anonymous Pentagon source. Nathaniel Cross operated independently. This was not a systemic issue. They were already spinning it, containing it, making Cross the villain and everyone else blameless. "They're going to bury this," Hannah said quietly. "We can't let them." "How do we stop them? We don't even know who them is." Garrett opened his eyes, looked at her. "Kira might." Hannah pulled up Kira's contact, called. It rang 4 times before she answered. "You two alive?" Kira's voice was tight with pain. "Barely. You?" "Shoulder's a mess, but I'll live." "What happened?" "They blew the warehouse. Everyone inside is dead, including Cross." Silence on the other end. Then, "He wasn't supposed to die. Someone decided he was a liability." Kira cursed under her breath. "Which means we're next." "That's why I'm calling. The message said Cross was just the face. Someone higher ordered the hit. You worked for Cordovan. Who's above Cross?" Kira hesitated. "There were always rumors, a board of directors that Cross reported to, but I never saw names, never saw faces, just encrypted communications routed through shell companies. There has to be a trail. If there is, it's buried deep. Offshore accounts, ghost corporations. These people don't leave fingerprints." Hannah's jaw tightened. "Then we dig until we find them." "With what?" "The feds are compromised. The evidence is ash, and we're burned assets with targets on our backs. We still have the data. The data that's already public? They'll claim it's fabricated, deep fakes, Russian disinformation. You know how this works." Hannah did. She'd watched the military bury inconvenient truths before, classify everything, discredit witnesses, wait for the news cycle to move on. But this time felt different. This time they'd killed federal agents to protect their secrets. That wasn't something you could spin away. "What about the agents who were there?" Hannah asked. "The ones who arrested Cross. They saw the evidence. They know it's real. The ones who aren't dead will be pressured to forget, transferred, reassigned, maybe worse." Garrett leaned closer to the phone. "So we just give up?" "I didn't say that." Kira's voice hardened. "I'm saying we need leverage. Something they can't erase, something public enough that killing us makes the problem worse, not better." Hannah thought for a moment. "The gala." "What?" "Cordovan was hosting the fundraiser, defense lobby, political donors. That's not canceled just because Cross is dead. The company's still operating, which means the people really in charge are still out there." Kira caught on. "You want to crash their party. I want to identify them, get faces, names, then expose them before they can disappear." "That's insane." "You have a better idea?" Kira was quiet for a beat. "When's the gala?" "Tomorrow night, Cordovan headquarters." "The same building we just broke into." "Yeah. They'll have doubled security, facial recognition, armed response teams." "I know." "We'll never get inside." Hannah looked at Garrett. He was already nodding, understanding where she was going with this. "We won't need to," Hannah said. "We just need to get close enough." Kira sighed. "I'll see what I can pull together. But this is a one-way trip if it goes wrong. It already went wrong. We're just finishing it." Hannah hung up. She and Garrett stayed behind the dumpster for another 20 minutes, watching the fire crews work, waiting until the chaos reached its peak. Then they slipped away, moving through the industrial district like ghosts. They found a 24-hour diner 3 miles away, slid into a booth in the back. The waitress brought coffee without asking. Hannah wrapped her hands around the mug, felt the warmth seep into her fingers. She hadn't realized how cold she was. Garrett stared at his own cup, not drinking. "You really think we can pull this off?" "I don't know." "That's not reassuring." "It's honest." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." He took a sip, winced. "What's the play? We can't just walk into a high-security gala." "No, but we can watch who does, get photos, run facial recognition, cross-reference with Cordovan's financials and see who's been taking money." "And then what? Post it online and hope someone cares?" Hannah shook her head. "We give it to someone who can't be silenced, someone with enough reach that killing them makes the story bigger." "Like who?" "Marcus Hale." Garrett frowned. "The journalist? You think he'll run with it after what happened to the feds?" "I think he built a career on stories like this, and if we hand him proof, real, undeniable proof, he won't be able to resist." Garrett leaned back, rubbed his face. "This is a long shot." "It's the only shot we have." They finished their coffee in silence, then left. Hannah called Kira again, told her the plan. Kira didn't like it, but she didn't argue. She said she'd have equipment ready by morning: cameras, long-range lenses, a laptop with facial recognition software. "Where do we meet?" Hannah asked. "There's a storage facility on the east side. Unit 72. I'll leave everything there." "You're not coming." "I can barely move my arm. I'll slow you down." Kira paused. "But I'll be monitoring. If you need an exit, I'll find one." Hannah thanked her, hung up. She and Garrett found an abandoned building to crash in, an old factory with broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. They took turns keeping watch, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. Hannah barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the warehouse exploding, saw the bodies inside, felt the heat of the blast. When dawn broke, they moved. Picked up the equipment from the storage unit: a professional-grade camera with a telephoto lens, a compact laptop, portable Wi-Fi hotspot, and 2 earpieces. Kira had also left a note. "Gala starts at 1900. Guest list attached. Focus on the high-value targets: board members, major donors, anyone with DoD connections. Get the photos. Get out. Don't be heroes." Hannah scanned the guest list. Over 200 names. Senators, defense contractors, lobbyists, and buried in the middle, Victoria Lang, senior advisor, Office of the Secretary of Defense. Hannah showed Garrett. "That's our target." "A Pentagon official?" "She's been at DoD for 20 years, oversees billions in defense contracts. If anyone's pulling strings, it's her." Garrett studied the name. "You think she's the one who ordered the hit on the warehouse?" "I think she's connected, and if we can prove it, the whole thing unravels." They spent the day prepping, scouted the area around Cordovan headquarters, found a rooftop 3 blocks away with a clear line of sight to the main entrance, set up the camera, calibrated the lens, tested the facial recognition software. By 1800, they were in position. The gala started on time. Black cars and limousines pulled up to the entrance, disgorging men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns. Hannah zoomed in, capturing every face. The software ran matches in real time, pulling names from public databases and cross-referencing with Cordovan's leaked files. Most were predictable: defense lobbyists, former military brass turned consultants, a few congressmen who sat on armed services committees. But then, at 1920, a black SUV pulled up. No plates. Tinted windows. The rear door opened. A woman stepped out, mid-50s, tailored dress, diamond necklace, blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Victoria Lang. Hannah snapped a dozen photos as Lang walked into the building, flanked by 2 security personnel. The software confirmed the match. Hannah pulled up Lang's background: 23 years at the Pentagon, decorated career, current advisor to the Secretary of Defense. Clean record, spotless reputation. But the leaked Cordovan files told a different story. 3 offshore accounts tied to shell companies that paid her over $2 million in the last 5 years. Consulting fees, advisory payments, all routed through intermediaries, but the paper trail was there if you knew where to look. "We've got her," Hannah said. Garrett leaned over, checked the laptop. "That's not enough. Consulting fees can be explained away. Not when they coincide with contract approvals. Look." Hannah pulled up a timeline. Every payment to Lang matched a major Cordovan contract: Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Billions in taxpayer money funneled to a company that was running illegal operations, and Lang signed off on everyone. Garrett whistled low. She's been on the payroll for years, and she's still operational, which means she's the one covering it up. Hannah saved the files, encrypted them, sent copies to 3 different servers. Then she started cross-referencing other attendees. A defense contractor who'd been sued for fraud 3 times but never convicted. A former general who now sat on Cordovan's advisory board. A lobbyist with connections to 6 different congressional committees. The deeper she dug, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't just one corrupt official. It was a network. A web of people who'd been profiting from endless conflict for decades. "There," Garrett said suddenly, pointing at the screen. "Who's that?" Hannah zoomed in on a new arrival. A woman in her late 40s, sharp features, expensive coat, no security detail. She walked in alone, confident. The software didn't recognize her. No match in any public database. "Run it again," Hannah said. Garrett typed commands. The software searched deeper. Corporate filings, shell company registries, international databases. Finally, a hit. Eleanor Grimes, CEO, Meridian Global Consulting. Hannah pulled up Meridian's information. On the surface, it was a legitimate consulting firm, but the financials told a different story. Meridian was a front. Money flowed in from dozens of defense contractors, then disappeared into offshore accounts. And at the center of it all was Eleanor Grimes. "She's the one," Hannah breathed. "She's the real head." Garrett stared at the screen. "How do you know?" "Look at the money trail. Every payment to Lang goes through Meridian first. Every Cordovan contract gets approved after Meridian submits a consulting report to the Pentagon. She's the middleman, the one who makes it all work." "So Lang's just another employee?" "Yeah. And Grimes is the one who ordered the warehouse hit." Hannah's hands shook as she captured more photos of Grimes. The woman moved through the gala with ease, shaking hands, smiling, playing the role of a successful businesswoman. But Hannah knew what she really was: a killer, a puppet master. "We need to get this to Marcus," Garrett said. "Now." Hannah nodded, started compiling the files, photos, financial records, the timeline, everything they'd gathered. She was about to send it when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing, and I know where you are." Hannah's blood ran cold. She looked at Garrett. "We're burned." "How?" "I don't know, but we need to move." They grabbed the equipment, started packing. Too slow. Below, on the street, 2 black SUVs pulled up. Doors opened. Armed contractors poured out, weapons drawn, moving toward their building. "Go!" Hannah shouted. They ran for the roof access, burst through the door, hit the fire escape, descended 3 floors, heard boots pounding above them. They jumped the last 10 feet, landed hard in an alley, kept running. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets sparked off brick. Hannah and Garrett split up, then converged 2 blocks later behind a laundromat, breathing hard, checking their 6. "They tracked us," Garrett panted. "The equipment must have a tracker." Hannah pulled out the laptop, smashed it against the pavement. "Not anymore. The files already uploaded to the cloud. We're good." They ditched the camera, the earpieces, everything except their phones, moved deeper into the city, using alleys and side streets, avoiding cameras. Hannah called Marcus Hale. He answered immediately. "Hannah? I've been trying to reach you. The feds. I know. They're saying we bombed the warehouse. It's all over the news. You're wanted for multiple homicides." Hannah's stomach dropped. "We didn't do it." "I believe you, but the evidence is stacked against you. Security footage shows someone matching your description near the warehouse before it blew. Bank records show recent purchases of materials used in the device." "That's impossible. We were blocks away when it happened." "Someone's setting you up, and doing a damn good job of it." Hannah closed her eyes, thinking. Victoria Lang had the resources, the connections, the motivation, but framing them this thoroughly took time. Planning. Which meant they'd been watching for days, maybe longer. "Marcus, I'm sending you files. Photos from tonight's gala. Financial records linking a Pentagon advisor to Cordovan. And a new name. Eleanor Grimes." She's the real power behind this. How solid is the evidence? Solid enough to end careers. Maybe start a war. Marcus was quiet for a moment. If I publish this, they'll come after me too. I know, but if you don't, more people die, and the truth stays buried. Another pause. Then, send it. I'll have it live in 2 hours. Hannah transferred the files, then hung up. She and Garrett kept moving, found another abandoned building, an old hotel slated for demolition. They climbed to the 3rd floor, found a room with a broken door, and hunkered down. Garrett checked his weapon. Half a magazine left. What's the play? We wait. Let Marcus publish the story, see how they respond. And if they find us first? Hannah didn't answer. She didn't have to. They waited in silence, watching the street below through a cracked window. An hour passed. Then another. Hannah's phone buzzed at 22:30, a text from Marcus. Stories live. Hannah pulled up the article on her phone. Pentagon advisor. Link to defense contractor. Corruption. Millions in illegal payments exposed. The article laid everything out. Lang's offshore accounts, the contract approvals, the timeline linking her to Cordovan, photos of her entering tonight's gala, and a new section at the bottom, Meridian Global, the shadow company behind the curtain. Marcus had included everything about Eleanor Grimes, the shell companies, the money laundering, the connections to Cordovan and dozens of other defense contractors. Within minutes, the story exploded. Every major outlet picked it up. Cable news ran breaking coverage. Social media lit up with outrage. Hannah watched it spread, felt something close to relief. It was out there now, too big to bury. But the relief didn't last. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. You just made a terrible mistake. Check the news. Hannah switched to a live news feed. The anchor's face was grim. Breaking news tonight. Authorities have identified the suspects in last night's warehouse bombing. Hannah Blake, a former Army medic, and Garrett Cross, a dishonorably discharged soldier, are now considered armed and dangerous. Federal agents are warning the public not to approach them. The screen showed photos. Hannah's military ID, Garrett's service record, both marked with red text. Wanted for terrorism. Garrett saw it, cursed. They're painting us as the bad guys, because we are the threat to them. So what do? We can't exactly walk into a police station and surrender. Hannah stared at the screen, then at her phone, at the message. You want the real story? Meet me. Alone. I'll tell you everything. Final offer. A location appeared below. Richmond Harbor, Pier 7, 0400. The same place the warehouse had burned. Garrett saw the message, shook his head. Absolutely not. It's a trap. I know. Then why are you considering it? Because they're desperate. The story's out. Lang's exposed. Grimes is exposed. They're scrambling. Hannah looked at him. Desperate people make mistakes. Or they tie up loose ends. Maybe. But if there's even a chance we can get more evidence, something that proves we didn't bomb that warehouse, we have to take it. Garrett started pacing. This is insane. You're walking into an execution. Not if we're smart about it. How do you be smart about a trap? Hannah thought for a moment. We record everything. Wire me up. You listen from a distance. Anything goes wrong, you call it in. Call it in to who? The feds think we're terrorists. Then call Marcus. Call every news outlet in the city. Make it public. Make it loud. Hannah stood, faced him. If they want me dead, they'll have to do it on camera. Garrett stopped pacing, looked at her. You're serious? I'm done running. This ends tonight. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this my way. You're not going in unarmed. They called Kira, told her the plan. She sounded like she wanted to reach through the phone and strangle them both. But she didn't argue. She said she'd meet them with equipment, a wire, a hidden camera, and weapons. At 0300, they rendezvoused at an abandoned marina 2 miles from the harbor. Kira was waiting, looking pale and exhausted, but functional. She handed Hannah a small device, a microphone and camera embedded in a button on her jacket. Range is about 300 yards, Kira said. Audio and video stream to this. She handed Garrett a tablet. You'll see and hear everything. If she's in trouble, you move. Garrett took the tablet, checked the feed, Clear picture, clean audio. Kira pulled out 2 sidearms, handed one to each of them. 15 rounds each, make them count. Hannah tucked the weapon into her waistband, covered it with her jacket. What about you? I'll be monitoring from here. If things go south, I've got backup plans. She didn't elaborate. At 0345, they left for the harbor. Garrett positioned himself on a rooftop 2 blocks from Pier 7, tablet in hand, rifle across his lap. Hannah approached alone, hands visible, moving slowly down the pier. The harbor was dark, just a few scattered lights reflecting off black water. The air smelled like salt and oil. Hannah's footsteps echoed on the wooden planks. At the end of the pier, a figure stood waiting, backlit by the city lights, impossible to see clearly. Hannah stopped 20 feet away. I'm here. The figure turned. A woman, late 40s, sharp features, expensive coat. Eleanor Grimes. Hannah Blake, Grimes said, her voice smooth and controlled. The nurse who brought down Cordovan. I'm impressed. Who are you really? Grimes smiled. Someone who's been running operations like this for 15 years. Someone who understands how the world actually works. By killing people who ask questions, by protecting national interests, by ensuring stability, by making the hard choices that politicians are too weak to make. Grimes stepped closer. Victoria Lang was useful. Nathaniel Cross was useful. But they were expendable. And me? That depends. You've caused considerable damage. But you're also resourceful, capable, the kind of person who could be very valuable. Hannah's jaw tightened. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a choice. Work with me, and you live. You get protection, resources, a new identity. You disappear, and this all goes away. And if I refuse, Grimes's expression hardened, then you die here, along with your friend on that rooftop, and Kira Voss, and Marcus Hale. She pulled out her phone, showed Hannah a photo. Marcus, sitting at his desk, visible through his apartment window. A red laser dot on his chest. Hannah's blood ran cold. One call, Grimes said. And he's gone. Then your other friends. Then you. She lowered the phone. Or you accept my offer, and everyone lives. Hannah looked at Grimes, at the phone, at the darkness beyond. She thought about Garrett's team, about the warehouse, about every person who'd been silenced. No, she said quietly. Grimes blinked. Excuse me? I said no. Hannah's voice grew stronger. You don't get to make this offer. You don't get to walk away. Grimes's smile vanished. Then you're a fool. She raised her hand, signaling. Lights exploded across the pier, massive floodlights from 3 directions. Armed contractors stepped out from behind shipping containers, weapons raised. Hannah didn't move, didn't flinch, because she'd been counting on this. Grimes started to speak, then stopped. Her expression shifted to confusion as more lights appeared, not from her people, but from above. Helicopters. 3 of them, circling overhead. Voices boomed through megaphones. Federal agents, drop your weapons, hands in the air. Tactical teams swarmed the pier from every direction. Real federal agents this time, not Cordovan contractors. They moved with precision, surrounding Grimes's people, weapons drawn. Grimes spun, searching for an exit. There wasn't one. She turned back to Hannah, fury burning in her eyes. What did you do? What did you... Hannah pulled the camera button from her jacket, held it up. I recorded everything, and I streamed it, live, to every major news outlet in the country. Grimes's face went white. They heard you confess, Hannah continued. They heard you threaten Marcus. They heard everything. An agent moved in, grabbed Grimes, forced her to the ground. She fought, screaming, but it was over. Cuffs clicked into place. The lead agent approached Hannah, the same man from the warehouse. He looked exhausted, but alive. His clothes were torn, face covered in soot, but he was breathing. Agent Darius Chen, he said, showing his badge. I owe you an apology. Hannah stared at him. You were supposed to be dead. I was in the parking structure when the warehouse blew. Blast threw me 20 feet, knocked me out cold. By the time I came to, everyone thought I was dead. He glanced at Grimes being dragged away. We've been building a case against her for months, but we couldn't get proof, a confession. He nodded toward the camera. You just gave it to us. What about the terrorism charges? Fabricated. Grimes planted evidence, manipulated footage, paid off witnesses. We've already started walking it back. By morning, you'll be cleared. Hannah felt her legs start to shake. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Garrett appeared from the shadows, limping but grinning. Kira was right behind him, looking relieved. Chen looked at all three of them. You did good work. Dangerous, reckless, but good. What happens now? Garrett asked. Now we clean up the mess. Lang's already in custody. Grimes joins her, and we start dismantling the network. Chen pulled out a card, handed it to Hannah. DOD is going to want a full debrief. When you're ready. Hannah took the card, stared at it. And Cordovan? The company's being seized, assets frozen, every contract under review. It's going to take years to untangle, but it's happening. Hannah nodded slowly. She wanted to feel victorious, relieved, something, but all she felt was tired. Chen started to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, you three just prevented a lot of future deaths. People will never know your names, but they'll live because of what you did. He walked away, joining the other agents. The pier slowly emptied, contractors arrested, evidence collected, helicopters lifting off. Hannah, Garrett, and Kira stood alone as the sun began to rise over the water. We did it, Garrett said quietly. Hannah nodded. Yeah. So what now? She looked at the city beyond the harbor, at the light spreading across the skyline. Now we figure out what comes next. Together? Hannah looked at him, then at Kira. Both of them had risked everything. Both of them had survived. Yeah, she said. Together. They walked off the pier as the city woke around them. Emergency vehicles departed. News crews arrived, setting up for the morning broadcasts. The story was already spreading. Grimes's confession, Lang's arrest, Cordovan's collapse. Hannah's phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. You did it. Front page of everything. They can't bury this. She almost smiled. But 3 blocks away, in an unmarked sedan with government plates, a man in a dark suit watched the pier through binoculars. He lowered them slowly, pulled out a secure phone, dialed. Grimes is compromised, he said calmly. Lang is compromised. Cross is dead. Initiate protocol, nightfall. A voice on the other end responded. Confirmed. Asset relocation in progress. Meridian accounts transferred. New identities active. And the targets? Under surveillance. Awaiting orders. The man in the suit watched Hannah, Garrett, and Kira walking away. Let them think they won. For now. He hung up, started the engine, and drove away. In a secure facility 200 miles away, servers hummed as data transferred. Shell companies dissolved and reformed under new names. Money moved across borders, and deep in an encrypted network, a message appeared. Protocol Nightfall active. Meridian dead. Phoenix rising. Eleanor Grimes sat in a federal holding cell, wrists cuffed, staring at the wall. She didn't look worried, didn't look defeated. She looked patient, because she knew something Hannah didn't. The network was bigger than Meridian, bigger than Cordovan, bigger than any one person, and it had been preparing for this moment for years. A guard appeared at her cell, unlocked it. You've got a visitor. Grimes stood, followed him down the corridor to a private room. No cameras, no recording devices. A woman sat waiting, mid-60s, silver hair, tailored suit. She looked like someone's grandmother, but her eyes were cold, calculating. Eleanor, the woman said, you let them catch you. I followed the contingency plan, and now you're a liability. Grimes's confidence faltered. I kept my mouth shut about you, about the others. I know, which is why you'll be transferred to a secure facility tomorrow. Federal witness protection, new identity, new life. The woman stood. But your part in this is over. And Blake? The woman smiled. Hannah Blake just became our greatest asset. How? Because she thinks she won. She thinks the fight is over. She'll let her guard down, get comfortable, and when she does, the woman moved toward the door. We'll remind her that there are battles you can't win, only battles you survive long enough to regret starting. She walked out, leaving Grimes alone in the room. Outside the facility, the woman climbed into a waiting car. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Blake is moving, heading east. Voss with her. Cross heading west. The woman typed a response. Let them separate. Easier targets that way. She put the phone away, looked out the window at the city passing by. Hannah Blake had exposed one network. But networks were like weeds. Cut one down, 3 more grew in its place. And this particular weed had roots that went deeper than Hannah could imagine. The car drove on through the early morning light, disappearing into traffic, just another anonymous vehicle in an endless stream. At a small motel on the outskirts of the city, Hannah sat on the edge of a bed, staring at the news coverage on the television. Grimes in handcuffs, Lang being led into federal court, Cordovon's headquarters raided. Garrett sat across from her, cleaning his weapon. Kira was on the phone with a contact, getting updates. It's over, Hannah said, but she didn't sound convinced. Garrett looked up. You don't believe that. I want to. But, Hannah gestured at the television. Grimes didn't look scared. She looked ready. Ready for what? I don't know, and that's what scares me. Kira hung up, turned to them. My contact says Meridian's servers went dark 30 minutes ago. Every account, every file gone. They scrubbed it, Garrett said, or moved it. Kira crossed her arms. If Grimes was smart, and she is, she had a dead man's switch. The second she got arrested, the network activated contingencies. Hannah stood, paced. So this isn't over. It's never over, not with people like this. Then what do we do? Kira and Garrett exchanged looks. Neither had an answer. Hannah's phone buzzed. Another message. Unknown number. You won the battle. But the war? That's just beginning. See you soon, Hannah Blake. She stared at the screen, then showed the others. Garrett cursed. Kira went pale. We need to move, Hannah said. Now. They grabbed their gear, left the motel, disappeared into the city. Behind them, in the motel parking lot, a car pulled in. The driver stepped out, looked at the room they'd just vacated, smiled, then got back in the car and followed. The driver followed them for 3 blocks before Hannah noticed. She caught the reflection in a storefront window. Same sedan, same distance, making every turn they made. We've got a tail, she said quietly. Garrett checked over his shoulder, subtle. Gray sedan, 2 occupants. Kira pulled out her phone. I'll call it in. To who? Hannah grabbed her wrist. We don't know who's clean anymore. They turned down an alley, quickened their pace. The sedan didn't follow directly, but Hannah knew it would circle around. Standard surveillance tactics. Keep the target in sight without spooking them. We need to split up, Garrett said. Bad idea. It's the only way to see who they're really after. Hannah hated that he was right. Where do we meet? The church, 1 hour. Garrett turned to Kira. You good to move? She nodded, favoring her shoulder but steady. I'll manage. They separated at the next intersection. Kira went north. Garrett went west. Hannah continued east, watching every reflection, every shadow. The sedan followed her. So it was personal. They wanted her specifically. Hannah felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, clarity. Whoever was driving that car had answers, and she was done asking nicely. She led them toward the industrial district, away from cameras and crowds, into the maze of abandoned warehouses where she and Garrett had hidden days ago. The sedan maintained distance, not trying to close the gap, just watching. Hannah ducked into a loading dock, climbed to the second floor of an empty warehouse, found a position overlooking the entrance. Then she waited. 5 minutes later, the sedan pulled up. 2 people got out. Not contractors, not federal agents. A man and a woman, both in civilian clothes, moving with careful precision. The woman was in her 60s. Silver hair, sharp suit. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom. The man was younger, maybe 40, built like he'd spent time in the military. They entered the warehouse cautiously, weapons drawn. Hannah descended the stairs behind them, silent. When she was 10 feet away, she spoke. Looking for someone? They spun, guns raised. Hannah had hers already aimed. Mexican standoff. The woman smiled. Hannah Blake. Finally. Who are you? Someone who's been watching you for a very long time. The woman lowered her weapon slowly, a gesture of good faith. The man followed her lead. My name is Catherine Winters, and before you shoot me, you should know I'm the reason you're still alive. Hannah didn't lower her gun. Explain. The warehouse, the federal agents. I made sure Agent Ramirez survived the blast, made sure he knew where to find you at the harbor. Catherine took a step closer. I've been cleaning up Eleanor Grimes' mistakes for the last 72 hours. Why? Because Grimes was supposed to be contained, controlled. Instead, she got sloppy, drew attention, cost us years of careful work. Catherine's expression hardened. And now she's in federal custody, singing like a canary to save her own skin. Hannah's finger tightened on the trigger. So you're what? Her boss? I was her handler. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Catherine glanced at the man beside her. He holstered his weapon, stepped back, a show of trust. Catherine did the same. I'm not your enemy, Catherine said. Grimes was a rogue asset. Meridian was never supposed to become public. Cordovan was never supposed to collapse. Cross was never supposed to die in federal custody. She paused. You exposed a cancer, but you only cut out part of it. Then finish the job yourself. I am. That's why I'm here. Catherine pulled out a tablet, showed Hannah a document. Classified. Top secret. A list of names. Military officials, congressional representatives, intelligence officers, all marked with dollar amounts. This is what Grimes was protecting. A network that's been operating for 30 years, funding off-book operations, destabilizing regions, profiting from conflict. Hannah scanned the list, recognized some names. Others were new. Why show me this? Because you're the only person who's gotten this close and lived. You're resourceful, persistent, and you've already proven you can't be bought or scared off. Catherine lowered the tablet. I want you to help me burn it down. All of it. And I should trust you because? You shouldn't, but you should trust this. If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead. I had a dozen chances. I didn't take them. Catherine gestured to the tablet. This network has killed thousands, destroyed lives, buried truths, and it's still operating, right now, while we stand here talking. Hannah stared at the woman. Every instinct said this was another trap, another manipulation. But Catherine had a point. If she'd wanted Hannah dead, there were easier ways. What's the play? Hannah asked. Catherine smiled. We have a problem. Grimes is in federal custody, but she's got insurance, files, evidence, things that would bury a lot of powerful people. She's using them as leverage to cut a deal. Witness protection. Exactly. By tomorrow, she'll be transferred to a secure facility. New identity, new life, and the network stays intact. So we stopped the transfer. Too risky. Too public. Catherine pulled up another file on the tablet. But Grimes made a mistake. She stored her insurance files in a physical location, an old military bunker outside the city, converted into a private data center. If we can get there first, retrieve the files, we control the leverage. Hannah thought it through. And then what? We hand them to the feds? We hand them to everyone, Congress, media, international courts. Dump it all at once, too big to contain. Catherine met her eyes. Grimes goes to prison. Lang goes to prison. And everyone connected to this network goes down with them. Hannah lowered her gun slowly. Where's the bunker? Catherine showed her a map. 40 miles outside the city, remote, heavily secured. When do we move? Hannah asked. Tonight. Grimes's transfer is scheduled for dawn. We need the files before then. Hannah nodded slowly. Then she pulled out her phone, called Garrett. Where are you? At the church. Kira's here too. You good? Yeah, I need you both to meet me. I'm sending coordinates. She hung up, looked at Catherine. My people come with me. Non-negotiable. Agreed. They met at an abandoned gas station 20 miles out. Garrett and Kira arrived first, wary and armed. When they saw Catherine, both raised weapons. Who's this? Garrett demanded. Someone who says she can help us finish this, Hannah said. And we're just trusting her now? No, but we're listening. Catherine repeated her pitch, showed them the files, the network, the bunker. By the time she finished, Kira was shaking her head. This is insane. We don't know her. Don't know if any of this is real. It's real, Catherine said calmly. And you know it, because you've seen how deep this goes. How many people have died? How many more will die if we don't act? Garrett looked at Hannah. What do you think? Hannah studied Catherine. The woman didn't flinch under the scrutiny. didn't look away. I think we've come too far to stop now. Kira cursed under her breath. Fine, but if this goes sideways, I'm shooting her first. Catherine smiled. Fair enough. They drove to the bunker in 2 vehicles. Catherine and her associate, a man named Dalton, who'd been silent until now, in the sedan. Hannah, Garrett, and Kira in a stolen SUV. The bunker sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by chain-link fence and barbed wire. No visible guards, but Hannah spotted cameras at every corner. Security? Garrett asked. Catherine pulled up schematics on her tablet. Biometric locks, motion sensors, armed response team on standby. We've got maybe 10 minutes once we breach before they arrive. How do we get in? Dalton held up a cloned keycard. Grimes' access, pulled from her personal effects before they logged them into evidence. That'll work? If she hasn't changed the codes yet. And if she has? Dalton pulled out a small device. Then we do it the hard way. They approached on foot, staying low, using the terrain for cover. Reached the fence. Dalton cut through with bolt cutters, and they slipped inside. The bunker entrance was a reinforced steel door set into a concrete structure half buried in the hillside. Dalton swiped the card. The lock beeped. Green light. They were in. The interior was colder than Hannah expected. Fluorescent lights, concrete walls, a stairwell descending into darkness. They moved down, weapons ready, footsteps echoing. At the bottom was another door. This one required a handprint scanner. Dalton placed a synthetic print, Grimes's, lifted from a coffee cup, against the reader. Red light. Access denied. She changed it, Kira muttered. Dalton pulled out the device, attached it to the lock. Lines of code scrolled across a small screen. 30 seconds. A minute. The lock clicked. They entered a massive room filled with server racks, humming with activity. Catherine moved to a terminal, started typing. Files are encrypted. Need Grimes's passcode. Can you crack it? Hannah asked. Given enough time, yes, but we don't have time. Garrett scanned the room. Then we take the whole thing, pull the drives. That'll trigger the alarm. The alarm's already triggered. We've been inside for 8 minutes. Catherine looked at Hannah. He's right. We need to move. Now. They started pulling drives, filling bags with hardware. Hannah kept watch at the door, listening for footsteps, sirens, anything. Then she heard it. Engines. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. We've got company, she shouted. Almost done, Catherine said, yanking the last drive free. The sound of boots on concrete, voices shouting commands. They were coming down the stairs. Time to go, Garrett said. There's no other exit, Dalton said. Catherine pointed to a ventilation shaft in the ceiling. There is now. They climbed up, Garrett boosting each person through, then hauling himself up last. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough to crawl through. They moved fast, ignoring the scrape of metal against skin, the claustrophobic press of walls. Behind them, the bunker erupted in shouts. Gunfire. Orders to secure the perimeter. The shaft ended in a grate overlooking a drainage ditch behind the bunker. They kicked it open, dropped down, ran for the tree line. Searchlights swept the area. Dogs barked, but they were already gone, disappearing into the forest, bags of drives slung over their shoulders. They didn't stop running until they reached the vehicles. Piled in. Catherine drove like she was being chased by the devil himself, which wasn't far from the truth. 20 miles down the highway, she finally slowed. We're clear. Hannah looked back. No lights, no pursuit. They'll know we were there. Let them know. By the time they figure out what we took, it'll be too late. They drove to a safe house Catherine had prepared. A cabin in the mountains, isolated, off-grid. Inside, Catherine set up a workstation, started decrypting the files. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of watching code scroll across screens, of waiting for alarms that never came, of wondering if this was all just another elaborate trap. Finally, Catherine leaned back. We're in. The files were everything she'd promised. Financial records linking the network to wars, coups, assassinations, communications between high-ranking officials and Grimes, proof that the conspiracy went beyond Cordovan, beyond Meridian, all the way to the top levels of government and military. Names Hannah recognized from news broadcasts, senators who'd built careers on defense spending, Generals who'd retired into lucrative consulting positions, intelligence directors who'd sworn to protect the country while selling it out piece by piece. This is enough to bring down administrations, Kira breathed. Which is why we need to release it carefully, Catherine said. Not all at once. Sequential leaks, each one building on the last. Make it impossible to deny. Hannah shook her head. No, we dump it all. Right now. Every outlet, every platform. Make it too big to bury. That's reckless. That's the point. The moment we start controlling the release, we become the next target. But if it's everywhere, if everyone has it, we're just witnesses, not threats. Catherine studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, your call. They spent the next 2 hours uploading files to encrypted servers, sending copies to journalists, congressional committees, international news agencies, whistleblower platforms, every place they could think of. Hannah personally sent packages to Marcus Hale, to 3 major newspapers, to the chairs of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Intelligence Committee. She uploaded terabytes of data to secure cloud storage with instructions for automatic release if anything happened to them. By dawn, the story broke. Not just one outlet, dozens, hundreds. The network's corruption laid bare for the world to see. Names, dates, dollar amounts, communications, everything. Hannah watched it unfold on the news in real time. Breaking news alerts, emergency broadcasts, social media exploding with shock and outrage. Her phone buzzed, a call from Agent Ramirez. You did it, he said, and she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. Every 3-letter agency in D.C. is scrambling. Resignations, arrests, the whole thing's collapsing. What about Grimes? Transfer's been canceled. She's being moved to a Supermax facility, no deal, no protection. She's looking at life without possibility of parole. Ramirez paused. And Lang's already cooperating, naming names, trying to save herself. Will it work? Not a chance. She's going away for life, too. Maybe longer if they can prove half of what's in these files. Hannah felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, just the absence of the weight she'd been carrying. What about us? You're clear. All charges dropped. DOD's issuing a formal apology. You'll be asked to testify, but as witnesses, not suspects. Hell, you'll probably get medals. Hannah almost laughed. I don't want medals. I know, but you're getting them anyway. Ramirez's voice softened. You did good, Blake. Really good. We just told the truth. That's more than most people would have done. Hannah thanked him, hung up. She looked across the cabin at Garrett and Kira, both watching the news coverage with expressions somewhere between shock and satisfaction. Then she noticed Catherine and Dalton were gone. When did they leave? Hannah asked. Garrett glanced around. Must have slipped out while we were watching the news. Kira found a note on the kitchen table. She read it aloud. Thank you for your service, the real kind, not the kind that comes with lies attached. You've done more for this country in 1 week than most do in a lifetime. Stay safe and stay sharp. There are always more fights coming. CW. Hannah took the note, read it herself. Think she was telling the truth about wanting to burn it down? About that part, yeah, Garrett said. About everything else? Who knows? Doesn't matter now, Kira said. It's done. Over the following days and weeks, the fallout continued. It was bigger than Watergate, bigger than any scandal in modern history. Congressional hearings ran around the clock. A special prosecutor was appointed. The president addressed the nation 3 times. Victoria Lang testified before Congress, gave up dozens of names in exchange for a reduced sentence. She still got 25 years. Eleanor Grimes refused to cooperate at all, maintained that she was following orders, that she was a patriot. The jury didn't buy it. Life without parole. 17 members of Congress resigned. 4 were arrested. The Secretary of Defense stepped down. The director of the CIA was fired. 2 defense contractors declared bankruptcy within a month. Cordovan Solutions dissolved completely. Assets seized. Contracts canceled. The company that had operated in shadows for decades ceased to exist. Hannah, Garrett, and Kira testified before Congress multiple times, told their stories, answered questions under oath, showed the scars they'd earned. The media called them heroes, whistleblowers, patriots. Hannah didn't feel like any of those things. She felt like someone who'd survived something that should have killed her and now had to figure out what came next. A month after the hearings ended, Hannah received a phone call from Redwood Heights Medical Center. Not from HR. From the chief of staff personally. "Ms. Blake, I want to apologize," the woman said, "for how you were treated, for how we failed you. We should have listened. We should have protected you. Instead, we made you feel invisible." Hannah didn't respond right away. She let the silence stretch. "I'd like to offer you a permanent position," the chief continued. "Trauma unit. Full benefits. Competitive salary. And an apology. A real one. Public, if you'll accept it." Hannah thought about room 412. About walking in and seeing Garrett chained to that bed. About the choice she'd made to help instead of walking away. "I'll think about it," she said. "Take all the time you need." Hannah hung up. She was standing in her apartment, a new one, paid for by the advance from the book deal she'd signed but hadn't started writing yet. The view looked out over the city, the same city where all of this had started. Garrett knocked on her door that evening. When she let him in, he handed her a beer without asking if she wanted one. "Heard the hospital called," he said. "Yeah." "You gonna take it?" Hannah walked to the window, looked out. "I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me thinks I can't go back to that. Not after everything." "You miss it, though." It wasn't a question. Hannah nodded anyway. "Yeah, I do." "Then go back." "Not because they asked, because you want to. Because it's who you are." Hannah turned to face him. "What about you? What are you doing?" "Kira offered me a job. Security consulting, vetting clients, making sure they're not the next Cordovan." He took a drink. "I said yes." "Good. She wants you too, part-time, whenever you're not saving lives at the hospital." Hannah smiled slightly. "You two trying to recruit me?" "We're trying to keep you in the fight. Just a different kind of fight." Hannah considered it. The idea of going back to the hospital, to the work she'd trained for, the work that mattered, but also helping Kira, making sure the next generation of private contractors didn't turn into what they'd just destroyed. "I'll think about it," she said. Garrett nodded. "That's all we're asking." He stayed for another hour. They talked about the hearings, about the arrests, about Catherine Winters, and where she might be. Then he left, and Hannah was alone again. She spent the evening reading through the files one more time. Not the classified ones, those were with the proper authorities now, but her own notes, her timeline of events, everything that had happened from the moment she walked into room 412 until now. It read like fiction, like something no one would believe if it wasn't documented 6 ways from Sunday. A week later, Hannah made her decision. She called Redwood Heights and accepted the position, but she had conditions. "I want to say in staffing, I want protocols updated for patient safety, and I want a seat at the table when policies get made." The chief of staff agreed to all of it without hesitation. Hannah's first day back felt surreal. She walked through the same hallways, past the same nurses' station, up to the same 4th floor. Room 412 had a new patient now, an elderly man recovering from surgery, stable and resting. She checked his vitals, adjusted his IV, made sure he was comfortable. He woke briefly, looked at her with hazy eyes. "You're the nurse from the news," he mumbled. Hannah paused. "I'm a nurse, yes. The one who saved all those people. I'm just doing my job." He smiled, drifted back to sleep. Hannah finished her rounds. The shift was long, exhausting, filled with the usual chaos of a busy hospital, but it felt right, like coming home after a long deployment. During her break, she sat in the staff lounge and pulled out her phone. A text from Kira. "Got a client who needs vetting. Defense contractor. Claims they're different. Want to help me figure out if they're full of it?" Hannah typed back. "Send me the details." Another text came through. This one from Garrett. "Drinks later? Kira's buying." Hannah smiled. "I'm in." She pocketed her phone, finished her break, went back to work. Over the next months, Hannah found a rhythm. Hospital shifts 3 days a week. Consulting work with Kira the other days. It was exhausting, but fulfilling. She was using everything she'd learned. The medical training, the combat experience, the ability to read people and situations. And slowly, carefully, she started to heal. Not from the physical injuries, those had mostly faded, but from the deeper wounds. The ones that came from being dismissed, underestimated, used. She'd been a soldier who became a medic, who became a whistleblower, who became a target. Now she was just Hannah Blake. nurse, consultant, survivor. 6 months after taking the hospital job, Hannah was called to testify one more time, not before Congress, before a military tribunal. They were court-martialing 3 officers connected to the Cordovan network, officers who'd ordered the ambush that killed Garrett's team. Hannah sat in the witness chair and told the truth. All of it. What she'd seen, what she'd learned, what the files had proven. The officers were convicted, dishonorably discharged, sent to military prison for the rest of their lives. After the verdict was read, Garrett waited for her outside the courthouse. "How do you feel?" he asked. Hannah thought about it. "Like it's finally over." "Is it?" "This part is." They walked to a nearby park, sat on a bench overlooking a pond. It was early spring, trees budding, birds returning from wherever they'd spent the winter. "I keep thinking about them," Garrett said quietly. "My team, wondering if they'd think we did right by them. We exposed the truth. We made sure the people responsible paid. What more could we do?" "I don't know. It just doesn't feel like enough sometimes." Hannah understood. Justice didn't erase loss. It didn't bring people back. It just made sure the truth didn't die with them. "They'd be proud," she said. "I'm sure of that." Garrett nodded, eyes distant. Then he looked at her. "You ever think about what happens next, after all this?" "All the time." "And?" "I think we keep going, keep fighting, keep making sure people like Grimes and Lang don't win." Hannah leaned back against the bench. "And we try to build something better, something worth protecting." "That simple?" "Nothing about this is simple, but yeah, that's the plan." A year after the scandal broke, Hannah received a package. No return address. Inside was a photograph she'd never seen before. It showed 6 soldiers in desert fatigues, arms around each other, grinning despite the dust and heat. Garrett's team, taken the week before the ambush. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "They didn't die for nothing. Thank you for making sure of that. A friend." Hannah stared at the photo for a long time. Then she framed it, hung it on her wall next to her nursing license and the commendation letter she'd received from the DOD, reminders of what she'd been, what she'd done, what she'd survived, but mostly reminders that she was still here, still fighting, still refusing to be dismissed, underestimated, or silenced. 2 years after everything started, Hannah was working a night shift when a young woman was brought into the ER, car accident. Critical condition. The trauma team swarmed her, working frantically. Hannah joined them, moving with practiced efficiency, establishing lines, monitoring vitals, anticipating needs before they were spoken. The woman survived. Barely. But she survived. Afterward, one of the newer residents approached Hannah. "How did you know?" he asked. "How did you know what to do before anyone even asked?" Hannah thought about all the field hospitals, all the emergencies, all the times she'd had to make life or death decisions with incomplete information and no backup. "Experience," she said simply. The resident looked at her with something like awe. "You're incredible." Hannah shook her head. "I'm just a nurse, doing my job." But she smiled as she walked away, because she knew the truth now, knew her worth, knew that being underestimated didn't make her weak. It made her dangerous in all the right ways. 3 years after the scandal, Kira's consulting firm had grown into a legitimate operation. 20 employees, contracts with ethical organizations who actually wanted to be vetted properly, a reputation for being thorough, honest, and incorruptible. Garrett was her COO. Hannah consulted part-time, bringing medical and tactical expertise that no one else could match. They'd built something good, something clean, and every time they uncovered a potential problem, a client with hidden ties to questionable operations, a contractor trying to hide their past, they dealt with it swiftly and publicly. No more shadows. No more secrets. One evening, after a particularly difficult case where they'd had to turn away a major client for ethical violations, Hannah, Garrett, and Kira sat in the office drinking whiskey that was probably too expensive for the occasion. "You ever miss it?" Kira asked. "The adrenaline, the fight." Hannah considered the question. "Sometimes. But then I remember what we're doing now matters more. We're preventing the next Cordovan, the next network. We're making sure the truth stays visible. And that's enough?" "It has to be." Garrett raised his glass. to the truth, and to the people crazy enough to fight for it. They drank to that. 5 years after the scandal, Hannah was invited to speak at a military medical conference. They wanted her to talk about her experience, about combat medicine, about resilience. She almost said no, but Garrett convinced her. People need to hear your story, he said. Not the conspiracy stuff, the rest of it. How you started, why you kept going. So Hannah stood in front of 200 medical professionals and told them about being a combat medic, about the impossible decisions, about treating injuries that shouldn't be survivable, about the weight of responsibility. Then she told them about coming home, about being reduced to temp work, about being dismissed and underestimated. They saw a woman in scrubs and assumed I didn't matter, she said, that my experience was irrelevant, that my voice didn't count. She paused, looked out at the audience. They were wrong, and I made sure they knew it. The room erupted in applause. Afterward, dozens of people approached her. Young medics, nurses, doctors, all with similar stories of being overlooked, dismissed, told they didn't belong. What do we do? One young woman asked. When they won't listen? Hannah looked at her, saw herself from years ago, scared, uncertain, but determined. You make them listen, Hannah said, not by being louder, but by being undeniable. You do the work. You save the lives. You prove your worth through action. And when they finally pay attention, and they will, you don't apologize for making them uncomfortable. You just keep going. The young woman nodded, eyes bright with determination. Hannah recognized that look. It was the same one she'd worn walking into room 412. 7 years after the scandal, Marcus Hale published a book, an exhaustive investigation into the network, the conspiracy, the people who'd brought it down. He sent Hannah an advance copy with a note. You once told me you were just a nurse doing your job, but history will remember you as the woman who took down an empire, whether you like it or not. Marcus. Hannah read the book in one sitting. It was thorough, well-researched, and mostly accurate. He'd gotten a few details wrong, but the core truth was there. She was mentioned extensively. So were Garrett and Kira. But Marcus had also highlighted the 6 soldiers who died in the ambush, had told their stories, made sure they weren't just footnotes. Hannah sent him a text. Thank you for remembering them. He replied immediately. They deserve to be remembered. You made sure of that. 10 years after walking into room 412, Hannah stood in her apartment looking at the wall of memories. The photo of Garrett's team, her nursing license, commendations, news clippings, a medal she'd never asked for but accepted anyway, and in the center a small plaque Kira had made. She was just a nurse until they pushed her too far. Hannah smiled at that. It was reductive, simplified a decade of complexity into one sentence. But it wasn't wrong. She'd been underestimated, dismissed, told she didn't matter, and she'd proven them wrong in the most spectacular way possible. Not because she wanted glory, not because she wanted revenge, but because she'd seen an injustice and refused to look away. That was the real lesson, the real victory. Not the arrests, not the headlines, not the vindication, but the choice to fight when it would have been easier to walk away. The choice to believe that one person could make a difference. The choice to stand up and say, no, not on my watch. Hannah's phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Critical incoming. Need all hands. Can you come in? She didn't hesitate. Grabbed her bag, headed for the door. Because somewhere in that hospital, someone needed help. And Hannah Blake would be damned if she'd let them face it alone. That was who she was, who she'd always been. Not a hero, not a whistleblower, not a symbol. Just a nurse, doing her job, saving lives. One shift at a time. And that was more than enough. It was everything. The end.